ॐ वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्. So today is the third part of the topic which we are discussing, the four types of devotees mentioned in the 7th chapter of the Gita. So we have seen that those four types, who they are: Artho, Jigyasur, Artharthi, Jnani Cha. Cha, as you know, in Sanskrit it means and. So Artha, Jigyasu, Artharthi and Jnani. Artha we have seen, Artha means the afflicted, and Jigyasu, those who want to know God. Artharthi is those who want the enjoyments of the world, and Jnani, far above the rest, one who has already realized God, one who has already realized the supreme reality or Brahman. So for last two occasions we have discussed various qualities of the Artha, Jigyasu and Artharthi devotees. What are they like? Many examples from the Puranas also we have seen. So today we'll go to the last and the most who is superior to all, that is the Jnani. So all those we have discussed, they wanted something from God. Of course, Jigyasu, wanting to know God, that is actually not a desire in that sense, because that desire leads us beyond all desires. So that is a desire which we should cultivate actually. So other two are, of course, with some kind of desire. They are devoted to God because they want something from Him. But now we come to the last one, who is Nishkama. Nishkama means he is without any desires at all. The fourth, Jnani, or the man of knowledge. So three qualities we have last time discussed. Jnani, that first is he has direct realization of the true nature of God, that is Bhagavad Tattva Sakshatkara. Tattva means the true nature. So he is already possessed of that realization. Second is he has crossed over Maya, that is Tirna Maya, and because he has crossed over Maya, he is Nivritta Sarva Kama, who is free from all kinds of desires. So this is the Jnani, and from some examples which are given in the Puranas, we will be able to understand better the nature of a Jnani. So I'll just show you some photographs, and many examples are there of the person who has realized God and who is now completely satisfied. So the first example is of the four Kumaras. All those who have read the Puranas will be familiar with these Kumaras. There you see the statue of Vishnu, and below you see the four Kumaras: Sanat Kumara, Sanandana, Sananda and Sanatana. So these are the four Kumaras. They are supposed to be ever free souls who are always wandering in the universe, and they are knowers of Brahman, and they have only one purpose in their life, which is to teach. So these Kumaras are ever free souls, like our Swamiji and Swami Brahmananda, etc., whom Sri Ramakrishna has classed as Nitya Mukta or ever free souls. They are never in bondage at all. So these four Kumaras, ever pure and all knowers of Brahman, they are representing the Gyanis. So this is one example. So these four Kumaras are Sanat Kumara, Sanat Kumara, Sanatan Kumara, and Sanandana Kumara. So they are supposed to be born of the mind of Brahma. They are spiritual sons of Brahma, who has created the universe, and they wander throughout the materialistic and spiritualistic universe without any desire for themselves, but only to give people knowledge. Eternally liberated souls, like Sri Ramakrishna has said that Swami Vivekananda was a eternally liberated soul who come to this earth only to give people knowledge, not for satisfying any of their desires, because they have none. So these are the four Kumaras. And another very famous example is, you have all heard of that character, that is Narada Muni. I'll just show you the photograph. So this is the famous, Narada is depicted like this, that he is playing the veena or the musical instrument, and he is always singing the praises of God. He is also a Jnani, and he also wanders throughout the universe just to teach people. So anybody who has read the Ramayana or the Mahabharata or the Bhagavata Purana is very well acquainted with Narada Muni. So this is another example of a Jnani. And I'll give you a third example. Third example is the king of devotees. He is known as the king of devotees. This also, I'm sure you are familiar with this devotee also. This is the king of devotees, who is Prahlad. Prahlad, you can see, this is the God's form, that he's got the head of a lion and the body of a human being. Narasimha Avatar he is called. So I think most of you know the story of Prahlad. Prahlad is the young boy whom Narasimha Bhagwan is blessing. He's got his right hand on Prahlad's head. So Prahlad was the son of the demon king Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu was a very evil person. So he tortured Prahlad in many ways, but since Prahlad was such a great devotee, he could not be killed. So Prahlada always used to say that God is everywhere in the universe. So one day Hiranyakashipu got mad with anger at this son of his. So there was a pillar in the court of Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu said to Prahlada that if you say that God is everywhere, then is God in this pillar also? So Prahlada said, yes, of course, God is there everywhere and he is in the pillar also. So it is said that Hiranyakashipu then broke that pillar, and out of that pillar came Narasimha Avatar. Narasingha avatar means he's got the head of a lion while the body of a human being. So God had to assume that form. Why? Because Hiranyakashipu had performed penances. He had performed tapasya, and one of the boons he had asked of God was that it grant me that I may not be killed by an animal or a human being. So when Hiranyakashipu asked that boon, he thought he would be immortal. Because there are only two types of living beings in the world, either human beings and those who are not human beings, those who are animals. So he thought then nobody will be able to kill me now. But God was smarter, so he assumed the form of a strange figure, Narasimha. He was neither an animal nor a human being. He had the head of a lion and the body of a human being. Then it is a very interesting story. Of course, I will not go into it now. The story of Prahlada is simply marvelous, unbelievable. So we can take it up later. There are two main sources of life of Prahlada. That is the Bhagavata Puran and the Vishnu Puran. So in a very wonderful way, it has been described. These are the ideals. You see, these are the Adarsha, we call it in Sanskrit. They are the guiding lights of how we can become devotees and what devotees are like. So before we see a life in front of us, we cannot have an idea of the qualities which are mentioned in the devotees. So these lives are given in the Puranas so that we can study them and we can have an idea of what devotees of God are like and what should be our attitude, what should be the qualities which we should have, what should be our attitude to the world. Everything is described. Beautiful teachings of Prahlada are there in the Bhagavata Purana. So it is a very interesting study and it will take many classes if you want to do that. So this is one example, and the last example, no, not the last, I will give another example. That is the ever free soul who taught the Bhagavata to King Parikshit. So from this you will all be able to guess his name. He is none other than the great ever pure knower of Brahman, Shukdeva. Shukdeva you see seated there, and below is King Parikshit. So it is said in the Bhagavata Purana that Parikshit knew that he would be bitten by a snake within 7 days, that he had only 7 days to live. So when he found that out, he thought that the rest of these days which I have on earth, I will give up everything and spend only in hearing about the Lord, only in meditation on God. Then it is said that Shukadeva himself, a knower of Brahman par excellence, the ever free Shukadeva, who was the son of the great Vyasa. Vyasa you all know, who divided the Vedas and to whom even the Bhagavata and Mahabharata are ascribed, the authorship, that great Vyasa. So Shukdev was his son, and Shukdev taught the Bhagavata Purana to Parikshit. So the ever free and ever pure Shukdeva, and it is said, I think it is there in the reminiscences of some Premanandji or somebody, that one devotee asked him that how did Sri Ramakrishna look upon Swamiji, Narendra? So I think Premanandaji said that Sri Ramakrishna used to call Swamiji my Shuka, my Shukdeva, because Swamiji was so much like Shukdeva, you see, ever pure knower of Brahman, ever free soul. So endearingly, Sri Ramakrishna used to call Swami Vivekananda my Shukdeva. So this is Shukdeva. So these are all knowers of Brahman, and they have a preponderance of knowledge. They are Gyanis. But there are other examples also. These examples which I will give you, I'll give you two examples. They are also knowers of God. But in their lives, we see a manifestation more of bhakti than of jnana. So one example you already know, that is the gopis of Vrindavan. They were all knowers of God, very great souls. But in their lives, jnana was not so much predominant as was bhakti. So manifestations of divine love. And another example I will give you, that name is not so popular. So I'll just show you photo. This example is of the Akrura. Akrura was a chief of King Kansa, and he had gone to invite Sri Krishna to Mathura. So this is Akrura. See, he is kneeling down beside Sri Krishna and seeking his blessings. So he had come to take Krishna to Mathura with him. As you know, Krishna had been taken to Vrindavan after his birth. That story you all know. His father Vasudeva had taken him to Vrindavan. But when Krishna grew old, then there was a divine mission waiting for him. He had to kill Kansa and all the evil kings, etc. Then he had to go to Dwarka, all that stories I think you know. So he had to come away from Vrindavan for that reason. So Akrura had gone to get Krishna from Vrindavan. So he is also supposed to be a great jnani, but in his life also there was a preponderance of devotion rather than knowledge. We should know that finally devotion and knowledge are same in the final stage, but according to the path which is taken by the devotee, everybody seeks God through a path, either the path of bhakti or the path of knowledge or the path of karma. So these are not watertight compartments, but according to one's nature, one takes recourse to more of one emotion than another. Like those who are more emotional take the help of bhakti. So these devotees, Akrura and Gopis, they were primarily bhaktas, but they were jnani in the sense that they were also knowers of God. This is the thing. So these are the examples of the jnanis who are free already, but even though they are free, they still worship God. They still adore God, they still worship God. Now, if you remember that we had put 3 questions, I'll just to refresh your memory. So these questions, I think you remember, that why should those with desires worship God? That we have answered. If everything is Brahman, we can love anything and be liberated. Why should we love God only? Like Rama, Krishna, Durga, all these Ma Kali, etc. Why should we only have a chosen deity like them? Why can't we have an animal or apple or something like a chosen deity? That also we've answered. So the third question remains to be answered. Why should a liberated person adore God? What will be his motive? This remains to be answered. Because you know that afflicted persons Artha persons adore God to get rid of their affliction. We have seen. Artharthi, those who want enjoyments, they adore God, telling God, give me that, give me this, give me a son, give me a palace, give me dollars, etc., etc. And Jigyasu, of course, he wants to know God. That's why he adores God. But Jnanis, they have already attained everything. Nothing is left for them to attain. Nivritta Sarva Kama, all their desires have gone because they have realized the true nature of God already. They are completely fulfilled. So why should they adore God at all? This was the question. So this was a question, but the answer is very simple. I'll give you the answer. What is the answer? What is their motive? What is their need? The answer is very simple. They have no need at all. They have no need. Still they worship God. So we should try to understand this. We can understand this by a very simple and interesting example which I had read. So that gave me so much joy. I just want to share you. That is an actual incident, very small incident, but it answers this question beautifully. So there was one great soul, he lived not very long ago, Swami Akhandananda Saraswati, in North India he was there. He was a devotee of Sri Krishna and he had also met some of Sri Ramakrishna disciples. As far as I remember, he had met, I think, Yogananda ji or Niranjananand ji, either one of these two. He was a very great soul, and this I borrow so much from his commentary on the Gita when I try to, actually all these are his ideas, what I am conveying to you. He was a very great scholar and a knower of God. So he tells this beautiful incident. Once he was sitting with another great soul, he was known as Hathi Baba. So Akhandanandji was sitting with him one day. Then one person came and asked Hathi Baba that, Sir, what is the use of chanting God's name? Why should we take the name of God? So Hathi Baba did not give a direct answer. He turned to Swami Akhandananda, and I'll first tell in Hindi because this can never be translated actually. The answer he gave was in Hindi, then afterwards I'll explain. So he turned to Swami Akhandananda and said, अरे ये आदमी क्या बनिया है क्या? Baniya, you know, Baniya means a businessman in Hindi. Baniya is a class of businessman. So when that person came and asked him what is the use of chanting God's name, so the Hathi Baba, he turned to Swami Akhandananda and asked, Are, is this fellow a Baniya? Is this fellow a businessman? I can understand that he is a businessman. Why? Why did he say this? So, see, Baniya has a connotation in Hindi that those who are always counting their profits and losses, they are called Baniyas. They can never think beyond profit and loss. Whenever they do something, they will first decide what they will get in return. They can never think of doing anything which will not give them more in return. They are always calculating their losses and profits. So that is why Hathi Baba, he asked, in order to answer this question, he said, asked Akhandanandji, is this a person? Looks like this fellow is a businessman. Why? He wants to profit even by taking the name of God. This is the thing. So even when you want to take the name of God, then also will you calculate profit and loss? That is the meaning. Means, can you never think of doing anything just for love? This is the main thing. So when we say, why do Gyanis also adore God when they don't need anything? When we ask this question, see our mentality. We can never think of doing something without any need. We can never think of doing something with pure love, without thinking of any expectation. So this one line is a wonderful answer that this fellow is a businessman. Because he wants to profit even by taking the name of God. So that everything is done only out of need is the thinking of businessmen. I have done this, what will I get out of this? But Gyanis are not businessmen. Gyanis don't have this calculating mind. Their basis of life is love and knowledge. They don't think that if I give this fellow $10, I should get $100 in return, or I should get so much of tax return and all that. They just give. They keep on giving. That's all. So we should understand this, that things should be done, just good things should be done just because they are good, not for expectation of only returns. So for actually Gyanis, those whom we are discussing right now, this world, this body and mind actually don't exist at all. We are so much identified with our minds and bodies that we can never think beyond that. But we should remember, Gyanis have already realized that only God is true. In comparison with that reality, the world is absolutely unreal. They have already realized that. So for them, the mind and body don't have so much importance as they have for us. But till they attain final release from the body, which is called Videha Mukti. This you all know. There are two types of mukti or liberation, you all know, I think. One is Jivan Mukti. Jivan Mukti means liberated while living. All these great souls, of course, Thakur and Ma, of course, we all know, even disciples of Sri Ramakrishna Swamiji and all the 15 disciples other, they were all Jivan Muktas, means even before they gave up their body, they were liberated. So the liberation which is attained after the release from the body is called Videha Mukti. Videha. Deha means body. So without the body means they are, when they leave the body, they are Videha Mukta. So now the Gyanis have already become Jivan Muktas. They are already free while living in the body. But till they attain Videha Mukti, till they give up their body, what will they do? See, their minds and bodies will act in the way they are accustomed to. See, one very important statement of Holy Mother is that in Bengali she says that, do the Gyanis grow a pair of horns? জ্ঞানীর কি সিং হয়ে যায় নাকি? মানে this means that when one attains jnana, it is not that his whole life, the mode of life he is accustomed to, does it change completely? Not at all. Outwardly he is the same. He keeps on doing the things which he is accustomed to. For example, suppose a Jnani was a vegetarian before attaining knowledge. Suppose. Now, do you think that after attaining the knowledge of God, he will start eating everything, meat, etc., what he has not been eating for his whole life? No, not at all. He will be what he was. If he was a vegetarian, he will remain a vegetarian. If he was a non-vegetarian, he will remain a non-vegetarian. So what Jnani has been doing all his life, he will continue to do that only. And we should remember that Jnanis don't become Jnanis all of a sudden. This you should remember. It is not that I was a worldly person all throughout my life and suddenly something will flash and I will become a knower of God. It doesn't happen that way. In some very rare cases it may happen, but generally it does not happen. Generally it is a very slow process. The whole life, not only this life, but the life before that also, people practice spiritual disciplines, life after life. Then finally, in their last life, they attain the knowledge of God. So it is not that one will become a Jnani by magic overnight. No. Life after life, they have been chanting the name of God. Ram, 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 suppose. Krishna, Krishna. Now suddenly will they talk about Satan or the world? No. They will continue to chant Ram, Ram, Krishna, Krishna only. Suppose they had chanted Har Har Mahadev and they used to offer water to Shiva. Or maybe those who would dance taking the name of Krishna. Or they were meditating on Narayana. So what will they do after attaining knowledge? Will they now start meditating on something else like Mahakali or something? No. They will continue to do what they have been doing. So they have been worshipping and adoring God life after life after life. So what will they do after attaining knowledge? They will do the same thing. They will continue to adore God, worship God because of their past habits. They have become so accustomed, even their whole life, their breathing also is a worship of God. They are such great souls. Anything they do is worship of God. So after attaining God, what will happen? Will they become worldly persons? No. They will continue to worship God, continue to adore God out of the force of past sanskaras. So this is another reason why Jnanis adore God, because that is their life, that is their very soul. They are not different from God at all. They have realized that God is the soul of their souls. So naturally, they will continue to do what they have been doing, meditating on God, worshipping God, adoring God. So Sri Ramakrishna describes this in a very wonderful way. He says, a clerk was once sent to prison. He used to do a clerical job. See, he was sent to prison. After the prison term was over, he was released. Okay, now what do you think he did? Cut capers or do his old clerical work? What will he do? He is a clerk. He will continue to do his old job. That is all he knows. So these Jnanis know only one thing. Shri Ramakrishna says, Mairi bolchi Ishwar chhada kichu jani na. Ramakrishna says, I tell you, I promise you, I know nothing but God. God is the only reality. What is the use of knowing anything else? So the Jnanis, this habit has entered their blood, entered their veins. Their whole being is full of God. So after they attain final knowledge, what will happen? Will they do something different? Not at all. They will continue to do what they have been doing. So Jnanis continue to adore God. And even, let alone the Jnanis, they are far above everybody else. But even a serious spiritual aspirant, even a serious sadhaka realizes that God should be the only object of our love. Even he realizes that. So let alone a Jnani, even a sadhaka, what will he do if he is serious? His whole life will only be spent in serving God, in adoring God, in worshipping God, in meditating on God. His mind will not want anything else. So when this is the case, even with serious spiritual aspirants, what about Gyanis? Their whole being is full of God and God only. They have no separate thought, no separate existence. They have, as Sri Ramakrishna says, they have become diluted in God. This is a wonderful expression. So when salt becomes diluted in water, what happens? Salt cannot be separated from water. So they have become diluted in God means they have no separate entity left at all. Such is their, we cannot even imagine such a state. It is beyond comprehension. So that is why even a sadhaka knows that God is the only object of adoration which there should be. So Swami Vivekananda says, explaining this, I quote him, quote, what can be a higher end than God? God himself is the highest goal of man. See him, enjoy him. We can never conceive anything higher because God is perfection. We cannot conceive of any higher enjoyment than that of love, and there cannot be any real love but in God. There cannot be any real love but in God. When we say we love something or some person or somebody, we should think about what we are saying. True love can only be had in God. We can love another person truly only when we see God in him, or at least we try to see God in him. Because the reality behind each of us is God only. So if we don't see God in person, we are loving something which has no existence actually, finally. Because if God is removed, what will remain? Only the mind and body, only the outer form. And loving that is no love at all. We cannot love matter. When the body is dead, what do we do? Do we continue loving that person? We simply go and either bury his body or burn his body. We don't love matter. We love the soul. And the soul is God. So there cannot be true love other than God. All other loves are fleeting. They are not real love at all. They are simply attachments. So that is why Swamiji again says, I quote him again, in search of wealth in this world, thou art the only wealth I have found. I sacrifice myself unto thee. In search of someone to be loved, thou art the only beloved I have found. I sacrifice myself unto thee. This is the prayer of Jnanis. This is the prayer of devotees. This is the prayer of all sincere spiritual aspirants. So, Jnanis also adore God. They love God. Why? Because it is their nature to do so. Their whole being is full of God only. They can never do anything else, ever, till they are in the body. So, another wonderful verse is there in the Bhagavata which describes this wonderful state of the Jnanis. It has been quoted so often by so many saints and sages, this verse, Atma Ramascha Munaya Nirgrantha api urukrame kurvanti ahaitukim bhaktim itham bhuta guno hari. This is a wonderful verse. So, the first word of this verse describes the Jnani, that is Atma Rama. This is a beautiful word in Sanskrit, very difficult to translate. Atma Rama, Atmani Ramanti. Atmani means in one's own self. Ramanti means he is always dwelling there. So Atmani Ramanti Atma Rama. He is always dwelling in his own self. He does not want anything else because he has known that his own self is God. So Atma Ramascha Munaya Nirgrantha. Grantha means knots. Nirgrantha means all the knots of their heart have been cut. All the granthis which keep us away from God, all these have been cut. But they also worship God. Kurvanti ahaitukim bhakti. Ahaitukim means that which has no hetu. Hetu means reason. It has no reason. They simply love God because it is their nature to love God. Itham bhuta guno hari. Guna means qualities. Such is the divine quality of God that even these great souls who delight only in their self, they also worship God. Such is God. So such is the glory of God. So it is a verse, very beautiful verse, and it has been quoted so many times. Atma Ramascha Munaya. These are the Gyanis. So they also love God. Why? It is their nature to love. That quotation of Swamiji which you have seen, they realize that the only thing, only entity to be loved is God only. So what else will they love? Everything else is hollow. And they love without any motive because they have attained everything. So Swamiji has explained this also, love without motive. I will quote him also now. He says, quote, "It is good to love God for hope of reward in this or the next world, but it is better to love God for love's sake." And the prayer goes, "Lord, I do not want wealth, nor children, nor learning. If it be thy will, I shall go from birth to birth. But grant me this, that I may love thee without the hope of reward. Love unselfishly for love's sake." That should be our prayer, and that should be our aim. It is very difficult to attain this, but that should be our goal in life. Then Swamiji gives the example of Yudhishthira. So Yudhishthira, you know what happened to the Pandavas, poor fellows, you all know. From the beginning the Kauravas were against them, and the Duryodhana gave them so much trouble. Then they were sent to the forest for 12 years. Then again 1 year they were incognito, they had to live Agyatwas. Then after coming also they were not given their kingdom, they had to fight. Nearly all were killed. So these Pandavas, we know how they had to suffer at the hands of the Kauravas. So Yudhishthir was the eldest of the Pandavas. So Swamiji now gives his example that one of the disciples of Sri Krishna, the then emperor of India, that is Yudhishthira, was driven from his kingdom by his enemies and had to take shelter with his queen in a forest in the Himalayas. That queen, you know, was Draupadi. And there one day the queen asked him how it was that he, the most virtuous of men, should suffer so much misery. This is the question often comes to our mind. He is such a good person, why is he suffering? He is such a nice person, why is he undergoing so much trouble? So, has God given a written contract that if you become my devotees, you won't have to suffer? Is this a bargain? If I worship God, do I want a contract from God that immediately all my pains will go? I will have 100 sons who will each live for 100 years and millions of dollars in the bank. Of course, that goes without saying. So, is there any contract? So, this question of Draupadi, when asked by Yudhishthira, so Yudhishthira says, is there any sort of contract that if I am devoted to God, I won't have to suffer. So what does Yudhishthir answer? He says, behold my queen, the Himalayas, how grand and beautiful they are. I love them. They do not give me anything, but my nature is to love the grand, the beautiful. Therefore, I love them. Similarly, I love God because God is the source of all beauty, of all sublimity. He is the only object to be loved. My nature is to love Him, and therefore I love. I do not pray for anything. I do not ask for anything. Let Him place me wherever He likes. I love Him for love's sake. I cannot trade in love. I am not a businessman. I am not a baniya. That I will love. I'll say, God, I will love you, but please put $1 million in my bank first. I am not a businessman. I will love God. Whether God gives me happiness or misery, that depends upon Him. My love will not change. And if that kind of love is there in our heart, then no misery can ever touch us. Because misery is what? Misery is trying to get something which you don't get. That causes misery. But if a person has that kind of love, he doesn't want anything else. So misery is no misery according to him. That Pandit, I think Shashadhar Tarka Chudamani asked Sri Ramakrishna, Sir, when Sri Ramakrishna was suffering from cancer in his throat, Sir, you are such a great soul. You can easily cure this disease if you like. Why are you suffering so much? Then what did Sri Ramakrishna say? What are you talking? My mind has forever been given to God. Now shall I put this in this cage of flesh and bones, which has to die one day? Let the body suffer. What is it to me? So that kind of love when someone has, no misery can touch that person. So that is the solution of going beyond misery, beyond going wants. That is the solution. Not getting all the objects of the world, even if the whole world is written in our name. If somebody gives us a blank check saying that all the money in all the banks of the world are yours, even then man cannot be satisfied. Then he will go to the moon and set up a bank there. If he owns the moon, he will go to Mars or Jupiter. Because problem is not outside, problem is inside. What we actually want is inside. We can never find it outside. So that is why Yudhishthir says, I cannot trade in love. And there is a beautiful verse in Ramcharitmanas also, which expresses the same sentiment. Sakal kamna heen je Ram bhagati raslin Naam suprema piyusha rida Tinhahu kiye man meen. Sakal kamna heen. They have no desires at all. But Ram bhagati raslin, they are forever merged in the nectar of Ram bhagati, of Ram's love, of the love of God. And Nama suprema piyusha rida tinahu kiye man meen. Man is fish. So fish is always immersed in water. Similarly, their minds are always immersed in the nectar of God's love. Such a beautiful verse. Sakal kamna heente. Ram bhagati raslin. Nama suprema piyusha rida. Tinamu kiye man meen. So as a fish is always immersed in water, their minds are always immersed in the love of God. They know that nothing else in life is worthwhile. And from that love, one has that love, he doesn't need anything in the universe. So what will they do? Even though they are completely fulfilled, the Gyanis, what will they do? They will chant the name of God, meditate on God, not to become free, because they are already free, they are already liberated, because that is what they have been doing. And that is the only thing they have realized is worthwhile. There is another incident in the life of Gopalir Ma. If you have read the life of Sri Ramakrishna in detail, you will be familiar with Gopalir Ma. She was a widow and she performed great austerities for more than 30 years. Then she had the vision of child Krishna, Gopala. So she was called Gopala's mother. Sri Ramakrishna loved her deeply because of her tremendous devotion to God. She was absolutely soaked in devotion. So she had attained everything. She had so many divine visions. So one day, Sri Ramakrishna told her that now you have attained everything. Why do you need to do so much japa and all? Because of past habit, even after having so many divine visions, Gopal's mother used to keep on repeating the name of God. So Sri Ramakrishna told her once, you have already attained everything. So Gopal's ma asked, really, have I attained everything? Sri Ramakrishna said, everything. Yes, you have attained everything. So Gopal's ma said again, really, have I accomplished everything? Sri Ramakrishna said, yes. But now that you have accomplished everything, it is no longer necessary for you to practice japa and austerity for yourself. But you may continue these disciplines for the welfare of this body. This body means Sri Ramakrishna pointed to his own body. He said that you have already achieved everything. So whatever now you do it for the sake of this body, so that I can remain in the earth for the sake of others. So Gopal's mother said, okay, whatever I do from now will be for your sake only. So Jnanis, whatever they do, it is not for their own sake. They have nothing more to achieve. So they do only thing, or they do all their activities either out of past habit or for the sake of the others. So for the people of virtuous deeds, 4 kinds, they take refuge in God. 4 classes. And they all adore God. The other 3 adore God because of some need, but the Jnani has no need at all. This is the main point. So today also we will not be able to go to the next verse, unfortunately. Very little time is there. But before ending, a very important point. A very important point which we should note. Now see, all these 4 Artharthi, it starts from Artha, Jigyasu, Artharthi, Jnani. All 4 of these have been mentioned in one verse. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukriti norjuna. Who are these 4? Artha, Jigyasu, Artharthi, Jnani. All the 4 have been mentioned one after another. And see, the Jnani has been mentioned last. So all these 4 have been kept at the same level, as it were, by God. Now you see, in a meeting, what do we see? Whenever there is any meeting between leaders or any well-known men or scholars, etc., all the persons who are of the same caliber, generally speaking, they are all seated at one level. then maybe those who are junior to them, maybe their students, suppose, they will be seated below them. Like generally, this is the rule followed in the world, that people who differ widely in their capabilities, they are generally not made to sit on the same level. But here you see, God is mentioning all four in the same verse together. In Sanskrit, this is called Saha Avasthita. Saha means together, Avasthita means stationed. So all these four have been stationed at the same level by God, as it were. Artharthi also, Artha also, this Jigyasu also, and Jnani also. So according to this law, that only people of the same caliber are made to sit at the same level, all these four should be equal. And we see that the Artha has been mentioned first and the Jnani last. So from this verse, we may think that since all have been mentioned in one verse, they belong to the same level. But we should not make this mistake. We should not make this mistake, because a Jnani rises head and shoulders above all these three. Others are not established in their own nature. They want something they haven't got. But the Jnani is beyond all kinds of wants. Now, if this is the case, why have they been mentioned together? This question comes. Why has God mentioned them together, when God very well knows, and He will say in the next verse, that a Jnani is far above everybody else. Jnani is my very Atman, he will say. Then why has He mentioned these four together? Why has He not mentioned Jnani separately? This is the question, and the answer is a beautiful one. See, the answer is given is that these are all from these great souls, Swami Akhandanandji's explanations. He was such a, his insights are simply wonderful. So when I read something nice, I thought of conveying to you also. See, beautiful answer is there. See, other three are also placed in the same category with Jnani. Why? Because then the other three will be pleased thinking that the all purifying bhakti that has made Jnani a saint has also come in our life. They will feel glad. Suppose a person, suppose he is not so qualified. Suppose a Nobel Prize winner is there, a scientist. Okay. And his student is there. He is not so qualified as his guru. He is just starting science. So suppose they are made to sit together. Then who will be glorified? The student. Is it not? Because he is made to sit on the same level with his guru. So what will the student think? See, this science, achievements in science, which has made my guru, he's got a Nobel Prize because of that. He has become so great. I have also become worthy of this place because of that science. Will he not think like that? He will. So similarly, here also, when the Artharthi, Jigyasu and Artha, when they are placed on the same level with a Jnani, they will be pleased. Why? They will feel that, see, because of the great power of bhakti, which has made a Jnani a saint, that bhakti has also come to some extent in our life. That is why we have been so fortunate to be sitting along with on the same level with a jnani. That is the power of bhakti. So let us now try to get more of this bhakti. Because the student who is made to sit with his guru, who is a Nobel laureate, he will think, yeah, if I can achieve that much, then in future I will also be given this prestige. Is it not? So similarly, these three, so that they know that this is the power of bhakti, this is the purifying power of bhakti, that it can transform an ordinary person into a great saint. This is the power of devotion. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna says that bhakti is of the only thing which is of essence. Bhakti sar. In one sentence he says. That is the all important thing. And Jesus Christ also says in the Bible, if you have read, once one of the Pharisees, he asked Jesus Christ, Teacher, which commandment is the greatest in the law? Which is the greatest commandment? If we can acquire that virtue, we will have everything. So what did Jesus answer? Jesus said, love the Lord, your God, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. This was Jesus' answer. What? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This means all our powers and faculties have to be directed towards only one thing, that is God. And then it is not that then we will not be able to love anything else. Then we will be able to love everything truly. Then that will be true love. If I love God with all my mind, I will be able to love my son, my daughter, my wife, my husband with a truer love. We should understand that. If we love God, we don't lose any love, other kind of love. We gain all other kinds of love. See in the life of Holy Mother, what can be a better example? Has there anybody been any other saint that love has been manifested towards everybody to such a great extent, like mothers and other saints also? So there we see why Holy Mother could love everybody in such a way. Why Sri Ramakrishna could love everybody? Only because their whole being was full of love for God only. So, and Swami Vivekananda's another quotation I will quote in this regard. It's a wonderful quotation. These are great mantras, you see, we should really absorb these things. He says, the soul best develops itself by loving God with all the heart. If we love God with all our heart and soul, then only our souls can develop. That is the best way to develop our soul. But love for God is very, very rare. Sri Ramakrishna says, Ami mukti dite kator noi, bhakti dite kator hoi, in Bengali. God says, I am not averse to giving liberation. I give to so many people. In Kashi, all those who are die are liberated. Hundreds of people, thousands of living beings. But bhakti dite kator hoi. I am very, very stingy. I am very miserly when somebody asks for devotion. That is very rare. So, in order to be devotees, what do we have to be first? It has been mentioned in the verse of the Gita. Artha Jigyasur Artharthi Jnani Cha Bharatarshava, all they are Sukritina. Chaturvidha Bhajante Mam Jana Sukritina. First step is doer of good he should be. He should always do good. If we are dushkriti, if we have evil tendencies, we can never attain love of God. Because only good deeds are what inspire us to love God. So, there was something more for the first verse, but I think we should end here and the first verse today here itself. So, after this we can go to the next verse, that when Shri Krishna says that among all these four, a Jnani is really special. He says that Tesham, of these four, Jnani Nitya Yukta Eka Bhaktir Vishishyate Priyo hi Jnaninotyartham Aham Sacha Mama Priyaha. Jnani is special. I am very much dear to the man of knowledge. Therefore, he is also dear to me. So that is a wonderful analysis. I think we can leave it for next week.